Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer here with Mike Gallagher, talk you through a massive 13-game slate, a 13-game slate that has me feeling it this NBA season. I'm as tired and exhausted as I've been in a while, but trying to muster the energy to fight through all 13 games here. Mike, how are you feeling today?
Doing good, actually. I got a really good night's sleep last night. Didn't even watch Inside the NBA. Took some tone, and I was like, I got a big day tomorrow. Finished matchups last night, so ready for the day here. So, but I could pick up a little bit of the slack for a change
Nice.
with all you got going on.
Nice. Yeah, you can pick up the energy for me because I'm struggling right now. Let's not dilly-dally too much with 13 games. Let's try to get through this as quickly as we can. Let's go game by game. We'll start with Portland and Milwaukee, or Portland and Detroit. I'm already off to a really tough start here.
Other way.
Portland and Detroit. On the Blazers side of things, Robert Williams expected back, obviously without Anthony Simons for a while. Any other notes for Portland side of things?
Oh, no, not really. We saw a little bit of overlap. I mentioned, that first game they went with that wacky lineup of Scoot. They did have Ant back then, so that's off the table. And Brogdon with the two centers. So they're okay playing those guys. We'll see if this cuts down Jabari Walker. He has been really immediately passed by Tumani Kamara, who I think's minutes are really safe. And the other kind of rotation note is Kamara is taking minutes away from Thibault. And I'd mentioned this early in the preseason, like, yo, watch out. And he might take his minutes, man. So something to keep an eye on for, possibly Thibault under, stuff like that. But Kamara's coming, really, really big energy impact player. I think they want to play him a ton of minutes. So really nice little sneaky pickup in that trade. And then the other thing is, oh my God, Shaedon Sharp's minutes are just massive. He's flirting with 40, not even getting garbage time and still hitting 36 minutes. So he's headed for pretty big minutes. We have an under on him, but we're projecting him pretty full. So still a pretty good bet for a guy projecting with full minutes.
Yep. All right. On the Detroit side of things, a big question tag here with Jalen Duren, who's questionable. Detroit, I believe, is on the front end of a back-to-back as well. Yeah, they play in New Orleans tomorrow night. Reportedly spotted at shoot around, kind of on the bike, not really participating. Saw Marvin Bagley in the starter's jersey there. So what's your expectation on Jalen Duren tonight?
Yeah, probably a front end back-to-back thing. Didn't really see what happened with him getting hurt, but obviously got initially listed with the Q tag with the ankle, mentioned on the bike. So we've seen Marvin Bagley consistently be the center too. He will be elevated, it looks like, with James Weissman getting into the rotation to probably cover those 48 minutes. We'll see if they maybe go to Isaiah Stewart, who really is a 5 and started out as a 5. So maybe that ups, Sasser's minutes. Maybe they get a little more Joe Harris, something along those lines. We haven't moved him out yet, but I would probably throw a couple of Stewart minutes just in case, because they still do have a pretty good wing depth. Maybe this is the way to get Jaden Ivey some minutes as well. So we haven't adjusted yet. We are usually conservative there, but it does seem like Duren's going to miss, and Marvin Bagley is going to start with Weissman behind him for probably 48 or more of the center minutes.
Yeah, I would guess, like, my feel on this is, 60 to 65% Duren doesn't play, something like that. I still think there's a 30 to 35% chance he does play. Obviously, big difference between the questionable and the doubtful tags. And while a guy's not participating in shoot around, that doesn't mean that they're not going to play necessarily. So we'll see how Detroit handles things, but it will be interesting to see if Detroit is as effective on the boards in the absence of Jalen Duren, if they do play without Jalen Duren, because he's been such a good rebounder so far for them early on. Matchup with Portland, obviously very favorable. So if Duren's out, Bagley will be a player that you'll be attacking from a DFS perspective. Thankfully, this is one of the earliest games on the slate, so we'll get that information in advance of lineup lock. Okay.
Detroit top rim defense per possession too. So again, just huge credit to Duren. Just been one of the most improved players by of the big men especially.
Yep. Let's move to Milwaukee and Toronto. On the Milwaukee side, no Chris Middleton on the injury report, not listed on the injury report. Sorry, usually when I say no, that means they're out, but not listed on the injury report. Marjon Beauchamp listed on the injury report as probable with an illness, and then just without their G League two-way guys. So any notes on the Bucks here? We saw they handled Miami again for most of the game until the fourth quarter, and then we were having some flashbacks of last year's playoff series. Last game ended up getting the starters' minutes kind of to normal levels, but you see Chris Middleton there still at just 17. You've talked about expecting a long ramp up. It certainly looks like that's going to be the case.
Yeah, he had a cartilage knee repair over the summer, and don't forget, last year we talked about this on previous shows. He had like a month and a half long ramp up from freaking wrist surgery, which is something that doesn't require usually a big ramp up once you're kind of up to speed. So this is way worse. I think this is going to be like probably December before we're projecting him for like 30 minutes, honestly. So, maybe Malik Beasley can get more shots, really suppress usage rate, which we've talked a lot about in our Slack. And then, we'll see if Connaughton's minutes are there. AJ Green will be kind of going away here after he got minutes from Marshawn Beauchamp. A little bit of surprise. Thought they may go a little bit bigger there, but Crowder's minutes won't have as high of a ceiling either. But really, the headline here is expecting a really, really long ramp up for Chris Middleton, who's like almost unusable in like even season long or DFS unless the price can way down.
Yep. Toronto side of things, Precious Achiuwa doubtful here. We saw him unable to go last game, and the leash on Jakob Poeltl was a little bit longer as a result. Matchup with Milwaukee, obviously not particularly great. But what are your thoughts on how the absence of Precious Achiuwa impacts things for Toronto?
Yeah, we'll see if they go smaller. They haven't really been willing to do that too much. You mentioned the Precious stuff when he was playing. He actually closed over Pirtle in the opening game. I think it was against the Wolves. But yeah, again, I think he's got longer leash here. I think they're going to want to probably play big. You kind of need it against Milwaukee. So I think Pirtle's minutes are pretty safe here. Chris Boucher, obviously not in the good graces of Darko yet. He is going to get most of, if not all, of the Pirtle minutes behind him. But the other thing, too, is Grady Dick is kind of coming here all of a sudden. That is really poor play on words, but I didn't mean to do that. But I think he could. He's really kind of cut down Gary Trent. That's really been the big story. Obviously, Trent in a contract year. They kind of weren't expecting him to come back. It sounds like I think Grady Dick could be passing Gary Trent. Other than that, a lot of Scotty minutes, past couple minutes, have still been okay. OG returning from cramps looked fine. Maybe plays a little bit more today as well.
Yep. All right, let's move to Brooklyn and Miami. Plenty of injury information on the Brooklyn side of things as they visit Miami here. No Nick Claxton, no Spencer Dinwiddie, no Cam Johnson. That's 3 starters down. Dennis Smith Jr. also questionable as one of their reserves kind of coming into the season. So I know they called up and traveled with some of the two-way guys. So it'll be interesting to see if they play really condensed and concentrated again. They've done that kind of, each of the last 2 games. You see Dinwiddie going down here, and Lonnie Walker was the one who really picked up a lot of minutes here. What's your expectation for how Brooklyn looks tonight?
Yeah, so I think they're going to probably bring it back out. We saw an 8-man rotation in the second half. Jacques Vaughn said that after the game that he felt comfortable playing Lonnie Walker and Royce O'Neal plenty of minutes, basically. And, Daron Sharp was barely in as well. So they almost ran, a 7-man rotation in the second half, based on them calling up and traveling with Armani Brooks and Jalen Wilson. I'm expecting them to play small. So we have Wilson and Armani at probably, I want to say, about 12, 13, 14 minutes. DSJ, we've got like 15-ish minutes for them. So we're expecting small ball lineups. We haven't really seen him go to Harry Giles or Trendon Watford. I think that would be the case here. So, and just, a ton of minutes. Talked a little bit about the pod yesterday where Cam Thomas is leading the freaking league in points off drives, despite being like 15th in drives. He's just shooting it literally like almost. He's like, I think he has like only one drive that's not a true shooting attempt, whether it's a free throw. It's just insane. He just is out there to do one thing. So straight gunning it. But I expect DSJ to play, call for hip contusion, upgrade, usually a good sign that he'll be out there. So should have the same starting lineup of Ben, Cam, and then I think Lonnie's going to start. I think it might be Royce, leaning Lonnie, given how he played pretty well. And there's some beat buzz as well. Mikal, Dorian, bench being, really strong minutes for Royce regardless. Dennis Smith should be pretty good. Lonnie should be pretty good. And then we're going to sneak Daron Sharp for what should be a 9-man rotation tonight.
Yeah, Cam Thomas has not missed a shot at the rim this year. I tweeted this out earlier today, but that'll help you lead the league in points per drive. On the Miami side of things, a lot on the injury report to digest here. Let's start with the good news. Available Kevin Love, Josh Richardson, Duncan Robinson. Probable Bam
Love actually got downgraded. I wasn't on the official report, but yeah.
Okay. So what is Love's status now? Is he questionable?
Questionable. Yep.
Okay. So questionable tags. The probable tag for Bam Adebayo hopefully still holding and good. The questionable tags, Jimmy Butler, Haywood Highsmith, Kevin Love, and Caleb Martin remains out here. Very full Miami injury report. They are kind of limping through the early part of the season. We're seeing last game, Tyler Hero have to play 42 minutes. Jimmy Butler kind of checked out earlier in the fourth quarter than normal, 29 minutes just for him. It was kind of the Orlando Robinson show in the absence of Bam Adebayo. That goes away with Bam back tonight, although perhaps Orlando Robinson could maybe usurp Thomas Bryant in the secondary role. I doubt it, but possible with how he played. But what are your thoughts on the questionable tags for Jimmy Butler, Kevin Love, and Haywood Highsmith, and how that impacts things?
So we talked about this, or I may have just thought it, but either way, Jimmy Butler has been terrible. He's been, not shooting. His shot has been right. He's been a step slow. He's getting blown by a lot on defense. And there was an article, a kind of Ask Ira Winderman on the Miami beat had mentioned that like Jimmy could be on his own schedule. A little troubling for a guy who missed all of preseason as well. So I think he's got a chance to miss or be managed. It just seems kind of bad. There's some commentary from some teams. It just sounds ominous for Jimmy's status. We've got him projected in. And if he sits, I think it would be Josh Richardson starting. We saw one preseason game before Rich got hurt. They went Hero, Lowry, J. Rich. I think it was Love starting. And then I forget. It doesn't matter. But those three guys started together. And then Haywood Highsmith, upgrade. There was some glowing commentary from Eric Spoelstra after this game that he was looking a lot better. He was, as I mentioned previously in some content, that he was like having the biggest from pre-camp expectation to post-camp expectation, like biggest change. He was just really, really playing well. So I expect him to probably maybe even start if Love's out, especially with Caleb. So actually I think he would start. Keep a minutes limit on him a little bit. They've been running pretty conservative minutes. The Jaime Jaquez Jr. minutes limit looked to be kind of squashed. He was, as you mentioned, kind of one of those guys that got some fourth quarter minutes. He didn't close. Should just mention that Jovic sub for him closed. You mentioned Orlando Robinson. It was Duncan Robinson, Hero, and J. Rich were the five. So that explains kind of these minutes here. But J. Rich, I think, is going to play a lot, cleared for minutes. Never really a lot of concern. Seemed like it was kind of just steps for him to clear. So if Love's in and Jimmy's in, they'd obviously both start. Then I think it'll be Hero, Lowry, J. Rich in the backcourt. I think Haywood Highsmith would start for Love in the front court if Love has to miss. And then, a little bit of Duncan. I still think Thomas Bryant is ahead. We'll see. Jaime Jaquez minutes are probably up. He seems pretty secure. So that kind of covers most of the bench in all these iterations, I hope.
So Lowry, Hero, Jimmy, Love, Bam, if everybody's healthy. Sub Josh Richardson for Jimmy if Jimmy's out.
Yep.
Snub Haywood Highsmith is your thought for Kevin Love. Although there could be a minutes limit situation on Haywood Highsmith, like you mentioned with Jaime Jaquez, but they started Jaime Jaquez with a minutes limit before and still kind of held him to a minutes limit. So just be aware that a starting role, and the good news is we've gotten kind of notes on minutes limits from Miami. So I think we'd get something on Haywood Highsmith if he was on one, but just something to note there from a minutes projection perspective. Okay, let's move to Cleveland and New York. These two teams are a rematch from last night's game in Cleveland. They go to the Garden tonight. On the Cleveland side, the injury list remains full. Darius Garland, Jared Allen, Ty Jerome, all out. Ricky Rubio, of course, out for a long time, not with the team. And then Karis LeVert, questionable with his hamstring soreness. No Donovan Mitchell listed on the injury report, which is the first bit of good news we've had on the injury reporting front for Cleveland this season. But we saw clearly they aren't the same team without all these guys. Donovan Mitchell is, playing through it on the hamstring side, struggled last night to get the big minutes workload, partly due to the game getting out of hand. But even so, his minutes weren't trending for the 40s that we've seen in the past. So what are your thoughts and expectations here? Do we see Karis LeVert tonight? We did not see him last night. And what are your expectations for Donovan Mitchell from a minutes workload at this point?
Yeah, I think he's going to be capped. Probably, high end 37, 38. You mentioned he was probably trending for 33-ish. Maybe they would have run him a little bit more. So he was capped even before the game got out of hand. So probably expecting for mid minutes, looking for some starters jerseys on Cleveland. Do not have them for the road game. Not surprising. So I think LeVert's coming off the bench regardless. I think that him coming off, again, hamstring, that's a ramp up thing. That's a thing you want to be careful. It's the most aggravated soft tissue that can be re-injured. So I think he's going to come off the bench, have a little bit of a cap on him. So would expect, basically the same starting lineup here with Jared Allen out again. If Levert's back, that would kind of kill Craig Porter, who was great. I mean, he filled up the stat sheet, played really, really well off the bench. If Levert's out, I think Craig Porter's minutes are pretty safe. Obviously, Niang, Imani Bates, these guys be looking at decent minutes again, but not great for Darius Garland. Didn't practice a couple days ago. Jared Allen not playing is really weird. He practiced on Monday or something. For him to be out again is very odd for an injury. They were kind of expecting him to play in an opener, and he's still out and still getting ruled out before before they have to
Yeah.
rule him out, really. So not good for a bone bruise and an ankle for a big man. But I think that mostly covers it, and they'll be looking to bounce back after kind of getting handled last night
Yeah.
at home.
I will note, I think the line tonight is more fair, but it's 6.5. Last night, it was the Knicks were just 1.5 point favorites. And I do think there's something to evaluating how some of these teams look early in the season, especially teams that are banged up. Like Cleveland, I loved Cleveland coming into the season. They're playing without a lot of their key players, and with some of their players that are key players that are playing like banged up. I do not think they're the same team right now. And I think there's going to be opportunities to take advantage of that when you see teams like this, like banged up and like playing through stuff. Miami's another one. Just like think through the opponents, and if they're facing a team like the Knicks last night were fully healthy. I felt really good about Knicks minus 1.5, kind of rolled to it. Today, 6.5 feels like a little bit more of an appropriate line. But just like think through those things with teams. Like I had that same opportunity with OKC the other night against Detroit, where like Detroit's looked really good early in the season, but they've kind of played some weaker opponents, and OKC has looked really good on the road against some decent opponents. So there's opportunities on the NBA, like to lean into some early season, like what you're feeling, what you're seeing in trend wise with the betting market. Nick's side of things, RJ Barrett is questionable with left knee soreness. They're really deep. They're a really deep team this year, and we know Tibbs has the mentality of like play guys a bunch of minutes. Generally wants guys to play through things. Going to let the training staffs he's worked with in the past in Chicago would like clear anybody. That famously Luol Deng was cleared to play with a fractured leg, that was then ruled out afterwards. So my point being here, like I think Tibbs is going to let RJ play if he wants to play. But they have so much depth to overcome this tonight that you could see a scenario where they're just like, hey, RJ, like just take the night off. We still got 9-10 guys we can play comfortably here, especially with, Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart acquisitions since midseason. So any expectation for RJ Barrett? I assume we're not going to get much reporting until right before the game on this one, just because it's a back-to-back and they traveled.
Yeah, they got their minutes held in check. Really, besides Randall and Brunson, they were good. So, I didn't see anything on this one. Think he's going to play. Guy's been playing through a lot. If he's out, I kind of think it would be Josh Hart starting. I think they want to keep Emmanuel quickly off the bench, give him a little bit of size as well. And I think Hart just makes kind of more sense to me. So, we expect him to start in his spot, probably play a ton of minutes if he's out. We know that, Tibbs will play his starters pretty heavy. So, Hart would probably be, I assume he's cheap. Hart would be probably one of the better spend down options if Barrett just had to miss this one.
Yep. Okay. Indiana and Boston. Indiana, very full injury report here. And this to me feels a little like a multiple rest spot for Indiana, sort of a sacrifice. We're probably not getting a win in Boston anyway. So maybe take some of these Q tags where guys have been like Tyrese Halliburton, who's listed questionable tonight. He's been on the injury report a couple days in a row with this right ankle sprain situation. Benny Mathurin, right elbow contusion. He's listed questionable. Jalen Smith, left knee sprain, listed questionable as well here. And just because Halliburton's been on the injury report a bunch and playing through it, and he generally plays through Q tags. This is something Justin Fan talked about a lot last year. He plays through almost everything. I'm a little bit nervous here, just that Mathurin shows up on the injury report as well. So what are your instincts here around Indiana? Do you have any additional reporting on Indiana that could lead us in a direction on an assumption about Halliburton and Mathurin's availability tonight?
Yeah, I think Howie tweaked his ankle pretty early in this last game. Worth noting, he was listed with an illness over the weekend, so I don't know if this is necessarily related. But it just kind of makes no sense to play him. Long season, you're 11-point dogs. You're already 2-1. I think that it makes sense to sit in a matchup where they're just so overmatched. If Howie gets ruled out, I'm racing to go bet this at 11.5. Like I feel like they're going to win by 20, Boston. Just a complete overmatch, which I talk about in matchups. I won't spend too much time since we have 13 games to get to. But I think regardless of Halliburton's in or out, and we saw this over the weekend with Halliburton was ill, they extended the rotation. They brought TJ McConnell in. So I think that happens here regardless. So I think TJ McConnell is going to play regardless. So that takes a little bit of minutes off Nembhard, maybe a little bit off actually Obi Toppin, who I think is in a terrible spot matchup-wise because they're going to need Aaron Nesmith to guard Jason Tatum. So I think my guy Obi Toppin's minutes could be real light today. Jalen Smith questionable, so that's pretty straightforward. They would just elevate Isaiah Jackson to fill his minutes pretty easily. But either way, I expect TJ McConnell to play tonight. Obviously, if Ben Mathurin doesn't play, quite easily they'd be starting Buddy Hield in his spot. But it didn't really look like Mathurin was dealing with much. He had a little bit of a fall late in the game that got him to the free throw line. I think that's probably what it was from. But I think he's gonna play. So I kind of think that Mathurin's in. I don't have a great read on Jalen Smith's knee injury. But yeah, so I think Halliburton's probably the tougher one to read. And again, if he's out, I'm just gonna bet Boston to blow him out. Yeah. Obviously, Nembhard would start in his place if
and Nembhard's had a big role in the past when he's been in those spots, so he would be an undervalued player and underpriced player in DFS. McConnell would be interesting in those spots as well. We've seen sometimes it ends up being like a hot hand situation with Nembhard and McConnell. Those guys don't share the floor a ton. And then the only other note I'd say is I think it's very likely that it would be Isaiah Jackson over Jalen Smith if Jalen Smith were out, but wouldn't be surprised if Jarris Walker got an opportunity to. Like the backup center spot for Boston isn't big, so they could maybe get into playing some smaller stuff as well and just get a look. It would be an excuse to get a look at the first round rookie that hasn't been on the court very much so far. Okay, Boston side of things, I think we can like breeze through. There's really nothing to touch on with Boston, right? Okay, let's move to New Orleans and OKC. On the New Orleans side of things, Brandon Ingram, questionable right knee soreness in this one. Look, we ended up winning our Zion under last game, so I can't complain too much, but really frustrating injury reporting from New Orleans last game where all day long, Brandon Ingram not on the injury report in any way, shape, or form, then kind of ruled out of the blue. He does show up on the injury report as questionable. We've talked at length about New Orleans in the past. Zion and Ingram, it just seems like these guys cannot stay healthy and play games together. What are your expectations on Ingram's availability tonight?
Kind of think he's sitting. We haven't projected in. That's part of our process because he's a Q tag. We don't have really much to go off of. He did get imaging on his MRI, but the reason why I think he's out, and I talk about this all the time, he takes a long time to come back from leg injuries, man. So I think he sits. I think they played Jordan Hawkins again, the first unit. Really big role. Should be coming for Zion. Again, we dodged a freaking bullet on getting that Zion under. Herb should be a little bit better. Had some foul trouble. We'll see if Valanciunas can make shots around the basket for a change. Matt Ryan, I kind of thought Matt Ryan had a chance to start. He kind of almost did with big minutes. Dyson Daniels' minutes have been really suppressed. I've been a little bit surprised Dyson Daniels hasn't really got there. They clearly just view him as like the backup to Herb there. So again, I think Ingram sits. I think if he plays, maybe there's a bit of a minutes limit. There's a national TV thing here as well that could be a factor. But he'd be running into Lou Dort, who's really, really physical if he does go. Yeah. So I do think he sits. But again, our projections don't reflect that. Again, they don't meet the threshold. But that'd be an interesting one to keep an eye on.
All right, OKC side, not really much to tackle here. They remain without Jay Lynn, the big Williams, and Ken Rich Williams. The back end of the rotation with OKC is always going to be a little bit fluid, right? Like past Isaiah Joe, basically in the rotation, it's all kind of a little bit fluid. You'll see a little bit matchups driven. We've seen some Poku against some bigger guys. We've seen Cason Wallace's minutes tick up and down at times. We saw Davis Bertans last game. I think that's going to be the standard, and I think Mark Dagnall just likes kind of messing around and testing things. The main thing from a DFS perspective is the starters' minutes, which have largely been good. The one thing I will note on OKC side, they've been involved in a lot of blowouts so far. So while we've seen kind of dampened minutes so far, there is certainly minutes upside to their main players. A lot of guys just haven't been playing fourth quarter minutes against Detroit. Very few of their starters played any fourth quarter minutes against Denver. Very few minutes for the starters as well. That's half their games. And then even Chicago, they lost a few minutes due to blowout at the end. So it's been a situation where we've seen a little bit tempered minutes so far from OKC because of game environment, not necessarily the rotation. Any other notes for you for OKC?
Yeah, just really the second unit flip flop. We thought that Casey Wallace was kind of the last man in for sure. He's like number 6 now. He's just played his way into a bigger role. His ability to shoot and make threes and guard and play in their defensive schemes, which can be really complicated at times. They run a lot of really complicated defensive stuff, and he's picked it up. So I think that the fact that he's picked up so fast has earned him mid-20s minutes role. Shout out to your guy. I'm very jealous of you. But Ousmane Dieng continuing to get the non-chets. And again, this Bertans, Olivier Sarr, Aaron Wiggins. I think Aaron Wiggins could be tied to Brandon Ingram. I think if Ingram's in, I think they'd be more likely to play Wiggins as kind of their last guy out and put him in. Same with Olivier Sarr. It makes sense to have him in the Valanciunas Zion stuff for more size. So I think those guys are probably in if they're in. But we know, I'd say pretty confidently, the starters, Ousmane Dieng, Isaiah Joe, and Kaysen are kind of their core 8.
All right, let's move to Washington and Atlanta. On the Washington side, Daniel Gafford remains questionable again. We saw last game. We were speculating on like how they're going to match up with a Boston team that's a little bit smaller. We talked about how they're comfortable playing Kyle Kuzma at center. They opened with that, with starting Bilal Coulibaly, their lottery pick rookie, in his place. The matchup with Atlanta tonight is somewhat similar in the sense that, it's tall, lanky center, but it's not big, bulky center. So if Gafford's unable to go, you could still get away with that type of stuff. Surprisingly, I don't think we saw any Mike Muscala in the last game in the main rotation at all, which was surprising. I thought he'd at least kind of get backup center minutes. But what do you expect from Washington tonight? And do you have any clarity on Gafford's availability or likelihood tonight with the questionable tag?
Should be good. It was never really a severe ankle sprain. He played through it at first, did get ruled out pretty early in the last game, but he was doing some stuff a couple days ago, going through shoot around. Sounds like he will be in and starting, which bumps Bilal Coulibaly out. Really, really disgusting first half minutes. I think it was 6 and change without any fouls. Was overmatched. This Boston scores 42 in the first quarter. That was the game. It was over. And I'm so mad at myself for I wanted to catch this live and not lay the 10, and I should have freaking just done it. Anywho, so expecting to start. And then we got a little bit of a crunch here because they want to get Johnny Davis in. I think they still want to get Bilal Coulibaly in. Obviously, they're still going to play Kispert and DeLon. And they still probably played Gallinari. I think Muscala is for sure done. But the question is, how safe are Bilal's minutes here? He hasn't really earned much after a really strong preseason. I wouldn't be surprised if he's real light today after just getting kind of wrecked early. And being overmatched against a really, really good Boston team. So keep an eye on Coulibaly's minutes. Keep an eye on Gallinari's minutes. They're okay playing small. Keep an eye on Kispert's minutes. I could see some second unit guy kind of getting really cut out because it seems like they do. And it might be Johnny Davis, but I think they kind of want to play Johnny Davis a little bit more to start the year.
Atlanta side of things, we saw a huge come from behind win for the Hawks against Minnesota last time out, led by an incredible second half from DeJounte Murray. And here we are with a questionable tag for Trae Young. Right Achilles inflammation is a concerning label on the injury report. Trae Young is a guy who's been extremely durable throughout his career, rarely misses games. But this questionable tag does have me concerned. What are your thoughts on Trae Young's availability tonight?
Yeah, anything Achilles is troubling, right? So I don't think Trae has any sort of Achilles history. I'm going to try to check on that really quick, just do some Twitter searching. Yeah, I don't see anything going past the last. Yeah, this is like the first thing. Capella has some Achilles stuff, but yeah. So don't have a great read on the situation. Maybe he sits, probably game time. Think they're just being cautious. I kind of think he plays today, but back pocket for people who like to bet lines early. Keep an eye on Trae in back-to-backs. Usually, when guys have any sort of Achilles injury, they may not play in the back-to-backs. It's something where you don't want to overload. So he may be able to get a little bit of points value. Maybe that for DeJounte as well. Something to keep an eye on if you're hitting lines early. But yeah, so I if he's in there, I expect maybe a little bit of a minutes limit, nothing crazy. If he's out, probably elevating Bogdanovic into the first shoot. Wouldn't be surprised if it's AJ Griffin. I think it's actually pretty close. But one of those two guys almost certainly in the starting lineup there. And then DeJounte would be just, oh my God, the league's worst defense. Just complete, like, no-brainer of a play if Trae has to sit.
Yeah. No upcoming back-to-backs for Atlanta on the schedule in the next week or so, so nothing to be able to attack there. Charlotte and Houston. On the Charlotte side, James Bouknight out, Miles Bridges out with suspension, Cody Martin and Frank Ntilikina still out. Any notes here on the Hornets?
Yeah, I do want to hit LaMelo here. Steve Clifford, was asked about LaMelo's minutes, and he basically said, like, I'm paraphrasing, but like we're gonna do this for a little bit. He also actually mentioned Mark Williams as a guy who has a little bit of a minutes limit as well, which is sort of new to hear. So that's something to keep an eye on. Mark Williams had a really big first game and has been a little bit quiet, but yeah, we know this rotation. We're gonna see this nine pretty consistently. We did see a little bit of small ball unit without the fouls, so that's something to keep an eye on. And this is really just Brandon Miller just pushing for minutes. So they're almost prioritizing Miller over Nick Richards and to a lesser degree JT Thor to make sure Miller is earning his playing time. He's been playing pretty well. So, and then also Gordon Hayward, top 10 in front court touches per game. Who would have thought? His role's been really, really strong. Rozier has a really, really big role, playing a ton of minutes. You see the 41 on the screen. So, yeah, we feel pretty good about this rotation. Matchup pretty good for the guards. We know Houston gets absolutely wrecked by jump shooters and guys who could score from away from the basket. So it could be a really, really big spot for Rozier and maybe LaMelo if he can actually, kind of get going and maybe get this minutes limit ditch. But do like Rozier a lot today.
Houston side, Tari Eason remains out with the stress reaction in the left leg. Victor Oladipo listed out on the injury report. No, Jock Landale not listed on the injury report. So they should have some center depth back behind Alperen Şengün. Any notes on the Houston rotation?
Nope, not really. Just Şengün, we were concerned about the role. It is not gone. His front court touches way up, minutes up, assist rate up, scoring around the basket. Everything's up, up, up. So the Şengün concerns have been completely quelled. He's in a really good spot. And we've seen Jabari Smith run the really bad matchups really all year. This is the first one he's got a good one. So my guy Jabari Smith, cross my fingers for him today. If he doesn't have a good game today, there will be some capitulation on my part.
Yeah, be leery of the early capitulation. We've seen Leone with the Christian Kirk capitulation after week one has looked poor. And I would just note that, like, I think them continuing to run things through Şengün is a pretty big indictment on Jalen Green. Just like it's pretty clear you can't really run the offense through Jalen Green. He can be your secondary guy or tertiary guy. But they view Şengün because Udoka is not a guy that I would have expected to continue to run the offense through Şengün. I do think running the offense through these big centers that are passing centers is a great way to get good offense just generally in the NBA because it spreads out defenses in a big way. But yeah, I think in general, like the early returns on that Jalen Green pick have not been particularly encouraging. Denver,
worst pick and roll player per possession with his volume.
That's why they're running the offense through Alperen Şengün. Denver and Minnesota. On the Denver side, only injury listed is Zlatko Konchar, rematch of the first round last year. I did note for our internal team, I am on Denver -2 tonight. We'll see if that's a fishy line. Obviously, the champs is small road favorites. A lot of people would like to bet that with how well Denver's looked. So we'll see if it's a fishy line. But I just think Denver looks really locked in right now early in the season. They will get a test against Minnesota with Jaden McDaniels back, which they didn't have to face in the playoffs last year. He's listed as probable with that calf strain. Came out guns a-blazing in this game against Atlanta. I think he scored 6 of the, him and Anthony Edwards. I mean, the first quarter was just an incredible shooting performance from Minnesota. They end up shooting 16 for 33 overall from 3, but I think they started the game 8 for 12 or something like that. Any notes on Jaden McDaniels? I don't think we have anything to cover on Denver. So any notes on Jaden McDaniels' probable tag and minutes limitations and things like that?
Yeah, minutes should come up a little bit. We saw him on pretty strict limit. Looked like in the first game, pulled his calf in the first game in Abu Dhabi. So had 4 weeks off, pretty standard. So expecting to be upper 20s today in a he had to guard Jamal Murray. So pretty tough matchup for Murray and for McDaniels. Murray's been just slinging it. His just precision passing all day, and then just to highlight Ant, and we talked about this on the pod yesterday. So I pulled up for matchups the Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's matchups for the games he's had so far. So he's had Jordan Clarkson 2 of 10 from the field. This is for the full game. Shea 2 of 16 from the field. Desmond Bane 4 of 17 from the field. D'Angelo Russell 4 of 12 from the field. Those are all his primary matchups. They were all really bad. KCP is just completely slaying high-end guys. Big test today against Anthony Edwards. We know he'll be shooting a ton. So really watching that matchup. Aaron Gordon has done a pretty good job on Cat over his career. So yeah, the two big horses for, they have the big horse guy in Jokic, but the Wolves' big horses get some reins put on them today. So I'm kind of with you there on the -2. And then as one of my favorite quotes. What am I gonna say, Dink? Brother, I have 47. The Gobert Jokic matchup is always fun. So yeah, I think Denver's got they look freaking awesome.
Yeah, I'm just frustrated. We took Ant under 3.5 threes made last game. He comes out, he nukes us in the first quarter with 4 threes in like the first 6 minutes of the game. Shoots 5 for 8 overall from 3. I go to look at the lines this morning, all excited. 2.5, the 3-point line today, which is the correct line for Anthony Edwards. So a little frustrating that I wasn't able to get it in good again there. Let's move to the Chicago Bulls and Dallas Mavericks. Chicago side of things, Zach LaVine listed probable on the injury report. That's the big note here. He's played through this probable tag now 2 straight games, one of which was downgraded to questionable, still played through. So I think he's fine. But any other notes on LaVine and the Bulls?
Nope, should be good. Yeah, I don't think there's much to add. I think Kobe's White's minutes could be real. Well, Kyrie being doubtful, we could talk about in a second. But if Kyrie was playing, maybe Kobe's a little on thin ice because you would need 2 defenders that could cut him down. But I think Kobe's minutes are probably safer-ish. But Caruso's coming. Javon Carter's coming. Torrey Craig wants to get minutes, all these guys. So, Kobe's minutes have come down a little bit, and I think there's a little bit
that
of
was the last game, though, was a little foul trouble related.
Yeah.
He picked up a bunch of fouls early. He picked up his 4th foul kind of early in the 3rd quarter after missing some time. Didn't close the 2nd quarter. So I think that was more fouls related than like matchup related. But obviously, as we talked about, coming into the season, that's going to happen with the guard depth that they have with Carter and Caruso and Dosunmu, who they all feel comfortable with as defenders. So there will be those times. You mentioned Kyrie doubtful with the left foot sprain. We saw Luka last game, another 40-point triple-double type situation for Luka. The role is just out of this world. What are your expectations? I guess 35-point triple-double. He came short of the 40-point triple-double that he's been basically averaging this season. We saw Josh Green in the starting lineup. He played 34 minutes, played really heavy minutes. We saw Tim Hardaway Jr., second on the team in usage, kind of the expectation there. The surprising note was Derek Jones Jr. did really, really well in that matchup. It's a revenge spot for him. Derek Lively struggled with foul trouble against Memphis. Tough matchup for Lively against Vooch from a foul trouble perspective. We'll see how he does. A good matchup for Lively to just race down the floor and beat Vooch for some dunks and stuff. But can he stay out of foul trouble? What are your thoughts on the Mavericks tonight?
Yeah, expect him to start the same. Josh Green, we saw him start and next to somebody, I forget who, as the 2 guard. That was kind of expectation for us going in. Plays full minutes, no surprise, expecting to run that back. Probably picking up the LaVine matchup there. Grant Williams will get the DeMar matchup. Derek Lively, yeah, you nailed it. I mean, this is a really tough spot for him from a half-court standpoint. We've seen Vooch, Chet. He did it to Chet. He's done it to previous young centers before. He makes him look really bad because he's kind of so polished with his moves. So Lively on pretty thin ice there. But yeah, this rotation should look pretty much identical with Hardaway Jr. being a strong 6th man. We'll see if Powell plays more. Hardy, we expected him to be pretty light. And he was in a little early. He was in for the first quarter, so I expect the rotation to be pretty similar. We'll see if Exum could kind of go away. And as you mentioned, on top of the roll from Luka, they're playing fast now. They are 6th in total pace, 12th in offensive pace. It has changed the game now that they were last in offensive pace last year. So just adding more possessions to a already growing role with some higher usage players out of there. Just, oh my God, Luka's could drop, multiple 50-point triple doubles this year.
Yeah. It's also it makes sense that they play faster. You compare the roster that they have now compared to the roster that they've had in the past, Lively, Derek Jones Jr., Josh Green, compared to not Royce O'Neal, Dorian Finney-Smith, Reggie Bullock, guys that aren't necessarily going to be big transition threats, right? They're more spot up defender type situations. So they've got more athleticism, more young guys. So it makes sense that they're playing a little bit faster as well. Okay. Memphis and Utah. Memphis, very full injury report once again. Add Derrick Rose to the mix. They get Luke Kennard back, but now Derrick Rose is out. So it's kind of the hokey pokey at the guard spot. Still without Santi Aldama. Still, of course, without Brandon Clark, Steven Adams, John Morant. So what are your expectations on how the absence of Derrick Rose and the return of Luke Kennard impacts things for the Grizzlies?
I kind of thought he was dead anyways, Rose, but now you're basically just going to put Kennard in his spot, and you'll basically shift Conchar over to being sub pattern wise more of a one, which they were kind of doing anyways at times last year when John Morant was missing games. So yeah, you're basically just putting Derrick Rose's minutes onto Luke Kennard instead, and I expect it to look pretty similar. This team's been terrible. Their offense has been pretty broken. They're actually protecting the paint really well. Them and the Jazz have actually been pretty good at rim defense and getting killed outside, which is pretty nasty offense. So I think they actually got a chance today. I've been betting against Memphis a lot and been going very well with that. But I think they actually matched up pretty well with Utah today. So I'm probably not laying Memphis stuff.
All right, Utah side of things, just without their G Leaguers, the rookies Taylor Hendricks and Bryce Sensabaugh. We've talked about Utah at nauseum this year, just like going to be a lot of ugly box scores with a lot of shared minutes. The good news was last game, we did see the reemergence of Walker Kessler, played really well from an offensive standpoint, rebounded the ball really well against Nikola Jokic. Hopefully that continues. But any other notes on Utah?
Nope. Just THT's minutes are still pretty dicey. We'll see if he could handle guarding Bane. It did bounce back a little bit over the weekend, but it's tough to feel confident about this team. Chris Dunn got nuked a little bit, I guess just John Collins' minutes are apparently just locked and loaded every night now. I mean, the guys kind of get every night. It seems like.
Well, one of the things we thought would be a threat to John Collins' minutes was Taylor Hendricks, and he's not ready, so he's going to be in the G League getting his work in there, and that's really that, along with Ochai Agbaji not being really ready to take on any big minutes, has allowed Collins to play pretty heavy minutes. And this is like the prettiest box score we've had from the Jazz this year in terms of minutes, right? Like getting the main guys into the 30s, Lauri Markkanen up into the upper 30s. Would love to see some more of this, but the challenge with this roster as a whole is there's like just enough good, solid veteran bench guys in Olenek and Sexton and Chris Dunn that the slightest hint of inconsistency from the young guys really brings an ugly floor in the minutes. So that's the thing to kind of watch with the Jazz. Okay, Clippers and Lakers. Let's start with the Lakers side. We're still waiting on Clippers injury information. We've obviously got a back-to-back there, but the Lakers side, very full injury report here as well. Rui Hachimura listed out once again. Jared Vanderbilt still out. Gabe Vincent doubtful. Cam Reddish probable. They're without Jalen Hood-Schifino as well. He's out. And then their G Leaguers are listed as available. Don't expect to see them. Colin Castleton and Alex Fudge. But without three kind of normal rotation role players, they've been without Vanderbilt all season, so that's not a change. But without Rui, without Gabe Vincent, how do things change for the Lakers tonight?
Computer's running a little slow here, but this helps out Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell's minutes a lot. I think that's kind of the big headline from the Gabe thing, because I think he could have really cut them down, especially when you need on-ball defense against the Clippers. So their minutes are significantly safer. I think Cam Reddish's minutes are going to be for sure in there, and then they maybe do bring in Max Christie. He's been kind of on the fringes, and then Christian Woods really stepped up. There was a comment from Darvin Ham saying they could tweak the rotation a little bit, and they did. They really brought more Christian Wood. Certainly, it may be tougher to do that against the Clippers today, but I think he's going to be in there. He'll get all the non-LeBron sentiments. Maybe he's earned more to cut out Jackson Hayes. So I think Christian Wood looked like he was dead going into the preseason, has kind of earned a bigger role. They need the on-ball defense from Taurean Prince. His minutes are pretty safe. So yeah, this Gabe Vincent thing's kind of a big deal because they can kind of only play one way, I would say, for going into this matchup. Again, we don't know. We don't know about the Clippers side, but assuming they're in, they kind of have to play a certain way.
Yep. Let's talk through the Clippers side and kind of first and foremost, do you expect James Harden to be available tonight?
No, could skip that part.
Okay.
He's going to be, they're shooting for Monday.
Okay. So then the questionable marks will be on the back-to-backs for Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. They handled things pretty comfortably last night against Orlando in what was a bit of a rock fight in the first half. And then the Clippers really got it going in the third quarter with Russ, PG really leading the way there. What are your expectations for the back-to-back scenario here? My understanding, right, is that they can't rest both. They would have to come up with like a legitimate injury. Is that your interpretation? What is your expectation?
I don't think they care. I think Palmer's got enough money, man. So I think if they want to sit him, they'll sit him. So, but if they don't, I guess they would have to bring Amir Coffey up. We saw Kobe Brown leapfrog him a little bit. Sorry, I'm kind of running slow, so I'm closing out some boxes here. So I think they would start Coffey. I don't think they're both going to sit. I think one's going to be out there. So probably expecting Amir Coffey. Bones is going to play and probably start again. Maybe they bring PG Tucker in. I think they would probably bench him off the first game. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. I think so. Basically, Kobe Brown 1, Amir Coffey 2, depending if one or both are out, and then filling in kind of gaps with some other guys.
Okay. Yeah, we'll wait for more clarity on that injury report. And of course, we'll break this stuff down on the DFS show behind the paywall later today as well. Last game of the slate to walk through, Sacramento and Golden State. On the Sacramento side, De'Aaron Fox is out with that right ankle sprain. They're also without Trey Lyles. Davion Mitchell expected to start here, while Malik Monk will probably pick up a pretty hefty ball handling role. This also, we talked about in the preseason, how if Keegan Murray is going to take that really big next step forward, it's probably got to come at the expense of Fox and Sabonis a little bit. Well, here you go. This is an opportunity. Malik Monk's going to be in that second unit. You replace Fox's 30% usage rate with Davion Mitchell's 15 to 18% usage rate. Big opportunity for Keegan Murray and Domantas Sabonis here. What are your thoughts on the Kings?
Yeah, so they're going to start Davion Mitchell. Been really quiet as a starter last year. I think it was 9 starts. He scored 9 points per game. That's not very good for a high-scoring offense. So I think his minutes are dicey, and I think they're dicier for probably a reason that most people don't think. I think Kobe Jones could cut him down. Kobe Jones had a really big preseason. He's been guarding. He played some closing minutes in that big dress rehearsal when Steph hit the buzzer beater 3. So Kobe Jones is going to enter the rotation. I feel pretty confident about that. And basically, you're putting Davion, and he's basically being Davion's spot. And then Monk will play a little bit of 1 and then sub in behind. And then it'll be, Kobe behind Herder. Herder's minutes have been, better. We'll see if he could kind of keep it going. He's been a guy who's been benefited without Fox, so he can kind of be alive. And then Keegan has to play great. I think Keegan's going to have a huge role, especially tonight. So really high expectations for him. And it's because Bonus has the bad matchup. He gets Kevon Looney. So I really like where Monk, Keegan, and maybe Herder, they could be in a pretty favorable spot tonight.
On the Golden State side of things, Jonathan Kuminga questionable. Klay Thompson probable after missing last game. Dario Saric probable here. Any notes on the Warriors?
Nope, should get Klay back. Probably not a minutes cap on him. Obviously, no Kuminga. We've seen Trace Jackson-Davis step up and fill minutes pretty well. I think Moses Moody would still be fine. They just play a little bit smaller that way. So I don't think they would necessarily need to play a lot of, bigger matchup against the Pelicans as well. Could have pushed them there. So, yeah, they're going to play Looney a lot. So expecting, Steph, Klay, Wiggins, Looney, Dre to start. It sounds like Chris Paul's going to come off the bench for the receiver. Pretty much every game Steph starts. I think Chris Paul's coming off the bench almost regardless. But the minutes are going to be there. He's second in potential assists despite the minutes being down. So I still think Chris Paul, who's going to have Malik Monk guard him a lot today. I actually like where Chris Paul's at tonight.
All right. That'll do it for this edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. 45 minutes, feeling pretty good with a 13-game slate. So, Mike, Thank you for carrying the energy there. Really appreciate it. As always, if you enjoy the content that we're putting together, please consider subscribing to this YouTube channel, get notifications whenever we go live. And, of course, smashing, pressing, holding down firmly that like button to help feed that algorithm. It helps feed our families. It allows us to feed you the NBA injury information analysis you need to make your spread bets, prop bets, and DFS lineups. So press, smash, hold down that like button and help us feed that algorithm. We really appreciate it. If you're interested in more of our content behind the paywall, you can check out establishedrun/subscribe-MBA for more information on our products and packages. We've got DFS packages, player props packages, so on and so forth. If you're interested in the prop side of things, please read that FAQ. Really important to understand how difficult the props game can be and how challenging it can be. It's a premium service. It's priced at a premium way. Want to make sure you have a good experience, so make sure you read the FAQ if you are interested in joining. We will be back tomorrow with another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show, so check us out then. If you are with us behind the paywall, we'll see you at 5 o'clock Eastern with another edition of Established Show. Take care, everybody.